Welcome to Perfectly Imperfect Me 365, the podcast where we get real about mental health, messy growth, and being human one day at a time. I'm your host, Rachel, and together we're navigating life's chaos with honesty, compassion, and a little humor. Let's get into it. Hello, thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Rachel, and today I have an amazing person, young man, Weston Wolff, who I've personally known pretty much your entire life since the day you were born and before. And my guests are now going to get to know you. And so let me tell you a little bit about him. He is a former Division I football player at the University of South Florida and University of Maryland. And after battling multiple injuries throughout his college career, he stayed the course, earning a degree in accounting and carrying forward the discipline, resilience, and perspective that shaped him by football. So thank you, Weston, for joining. I'm so excited because you're one of my guests that I get to have on that I've personally known your entire life. So I've had the privilege of watching your journey, even though I'm from afar, because your dad's my best friend. And
Yeah.
so, I've kind of been entwined with that. So welcome. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no. When I thought about making my guest list and who I was going to have, I thought you and your brother were definitely important people to have on because as athletes who this has been pretty much your entire life and where it's taken you to in college, I think there's a lot of athletes out there that don't know what to do, don't know how to handle life's journeys, and not even kids in high school that may want to go this route. And this is not to deter anybody from going your dreams and seeking your dreams at all, right? It's just to kind of I don't think a lot of people are privy to what's really part of it. And there's a lot of challenges. So I think I just want to open it up to you really to kind of maybe before we talk injuries and transfers. Like who were you as an athlete growing up? What did football mean to you and what had that take you from there to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just start by talking a little bit about my journey with football. So I started playing football when I was 5 years old. So I was very little. I started playing Pop Warner, and I didn't know anything about football. My parents kind of just said, "Hey, you're gonna play football now." So
Right.
I played football, and it's funny because we were actually my brother and I were kind of bribed to play football. I don't remember exactly
Why
what it
doesn't
was,
that
but
surprise me?
yeah. It was something like every week we would get a pack of gum for
Right.
playing. And then so after our first year or two, we were like, man, we really like this. And so he my brother's 2 years older than me. So we were never really on the same team until high school. But we really kind of both just fell in love with football, and we played basketball as well, and some other sports here and there, but football was always our number one sport.
But you both also excelled in basketball too.
Uh, we were decent basketball players as well,
I mean,
but
you guys had the height alone. I mean, come
yeah.
on,
Yeah, well,
right?
once you get to, once it gets serious in basketball, like some of those guys get really tall, and then
Right,
I'm 6'4", so in college the guards are 6'4". So
right.
it gets to a certain point where you have to be either you got to be tall and super talented, but I was just tall. So
Mhm.
football was my course. And then when I got to high school, I kind of watched my brother go through the recruiting process, and so I kind of, at that point I was like, man, I can do this too. Um, so after my brother's junior year, which was my freshman year, that was our first year playing together on the same team. We had a lot of fun. Like I started some games as a freshman, did pretty well, and then we both transferred to a different high school because we kind of decided at that point that we were gonna, pursue football as,
Right.
for college scholarship opportunities. So we both transferred, which was, it was different. We grew up in one town and transferred to a school in a completely different town, and so that was interesting, kind of, a different adjustment and everything.
In the middle
But
of high school, nonetheless.
yeah, right in the middle of the high school
Right.
school year. So I mean, that's difficult, but looking back, like it was one of the best decisions we ever made. We made a ton of friends, all that stuff, and ended up working out really well. My brother ended up at Old Dominion University, And then I ended up going to the University of Maryland out of high school. I had a good high school career.
Mm-hmm.
Had a bunch of scholarship opportunities in high school, all that stuff. But I ended up going to the University of Maryland. So I spent my first 2 seasons there. Um, you know, Freshman year, kind of walked into I played tight end, so I kind of walked into a group that was very experienced and, had some guys that were NFL talent level. And as a freshman, you kind of walk in with expectations like, I'm gonna play. Like I want to walk in
Right.
right now and play. And that's not always realistic. So I kind of walked in with that expectation, and I got kind of brought down a few levels when I realized, all right, these are the guys that I'm competing with.
Right.
But I redshirted my freshman year. I grew a lot. I learned a lot about the game because it's a completely different level than high school. So I learned a lot that first year. Played a little bit. Actually had my first college reception in Yankee Stadium during a
Mm.
bowl game, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And then my second year, same thing. Didn't really play too much. And then at that point, I was kind of like, let me try to figure out a way where I can find a place where I can not only be happy, but find an opportunity where I can go play and excel and achieve my goals of playing at a high level in college.
Right.
So that's when I transferred to University of South Florida. I started here in 2022. I transferred
Which
here.
was still early on in the COVID years. So like there was a lot of different changes with like the COVID years and the 5-year rule and all these things. And so now you're not only competing during that time, but you're also competing with other people, other players that are older that now have a few extra years.
Yeah, so that's what kind of made recruiting in my like the 2021 recruiting class and 2022, which was the year that I was being recruited, 2021. The whole COVID, extra year of eligibility for everyone,
Right.
it added a full extra class of guys that you're competing with when you're walking into college.
Right.
And that's like those guys are just now being finishing up their eligibility. So it's been unique the last few years. Um, so then after I transferred to USF, my first season at USF was the 2023 season. Had a great season. Just, I really walked in and just, did a really good job and had a great season, had a ton of fun, like made, some friends that are going to be lifelong friends and,
Uh,
just was a great time. And that's where I finished out my career was at USF.
right. So was transferring hard, like choosing to do that? Because you get it in your mind, you're going to play here and you're going to stay here. And maybe things didn't pan out the way you expected them to, wanted them to, or you're given other opportunities, right? Because I know like now with, NIL money and things like that was also a new thing. And just being able to then like shift and transfer so easily for many kids, right? How was that difficult for you, or was that just like an easy decision?
I mean, it's definitely a hard decision when you're making a decision of that magnitude,
Right,
just because it's like such a huge change in your life. But it kind of got to the point where I was like, I'm not playing here. This is my second year. Okay, like I have to see, like, am I going to play next year? Was the first kind of thing that I had to think about, and the outlook wasn't good. Uh,
mm,
so I had to weigh that, and then it got to a point where I was like, you know what? Like, I have to put myself out on the line and try to find a better opportunity. There's a good chance when you enter the transfer portal, like,
right,
you might not get a better opportunity. But at that point in my career, I was willing to take that risk. And it ended up working out really well for me just because I had been so highly recruited in high school.
right.
So I had a lot of connections in the coaching world. So I was able to kind of reach out to a bunch of people, and a lot of people were getting back to me, and I ended up reconnecting with a coach that recruited me in high school, who ended up being my head coach here at USF.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So that's kind of how it works. Like, and honestly, probably how it works for most guys, getting in the transfer portal is like you have to be able to leverage those connections
Right,
that you've made just through like recruitment and like maybe some coaches that and all that stuff like that.
right. So that's for the younger listeners who may be listening to this episode about, and they have this desire and this dream to play any sport, right, in college. Making those connections, even if you ultimately don't end up at that school, or you go to these, showcases and there's plenty of coaches there and you introduce yourself or you make those connections, being able to hold on to those connections and kind of just keep in touch, I think is so super important. And also like the impression that you must have left with them for them to still kind of say, you know what, come on, right? Because many kids are not mature enough, in my opinion, right? And I have two young kids, and one went the athletic route of college ball. Like they're not mature enough to even consider, like, I need to leave a good impression. We're talking like 16, 17, you're in high school. And so being able to keep those connections and knowing how important they are so that if you do need to kind of like circle back, it was a good impression that you left for them to like say, you know what? I want you.
Yeah, and so that's a really good point. And one thing that I did when I was being recruited in high school was I was lucky to have a lot of bigger schools that were recruiting me, which obviously like I was a little bit more excited about those than some of the smaller schools.
Right,
But at the same time, like I would answer every call. I would reach out to every coach, whether it be from a big school or a small school. I would respond to their texts and, give them the time of day. Because, when it came down to it 2 years later and I was not in a great place, I still had good relationships with those people and they still respected me. And,
right.
so I was able to reach out to them and ask for a favor because I had built that relationship with them and earned that respect during the time when they were recruiting me.
See, I got a lot of that feedback from your dad that what you guys were doing. And that was the one piece that I remember when he spoke to Cole about it. Dad said, regardless of the school, regardless if it's something that you ever think you would consider or not consider, answer those coaches.
Hmm.
Just respond. And it
Yeah,
was,
and like don't burn any bridges too. Like
yeah, so
what
important.
yeah. And I think that's important like in business and anything like that. It's just like you never know when you're going to come back in contact with someone.
I tell my clients, I tell my kids, you never want to burn a bridge. The only time that you're ever gonna like burn a bridge is honestly when you're dead, because then there's no opportunity for that bridge to be crossed, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, but you never know. You just never know.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah, and you
so
see it a
right.
lot. You see it a lot in college football and college sports in general because like the coaching carousel with, all the staffs moving around and getting hired here and getting fired and going all over the place. Like
Right,
a coach that you're talking about or that you're talking to from this small school now, maybe 2 years from now, he'll be, an offensive coordinator or a head coach at another school that you would want to go to in 2 years.
right,
So it's like just really, like I said, just answering all those phone calls, giving everyone the time of day and having that relationship
right.
was good. It worked out for me, and I think that's important for everyone who's going through that recruiting process.
100%. I think it's so important, especially. So you get to USF, you're enjoying football? I mean, because I know it's hard, like what you do, right? You're playing at a D1 school. It's like you're eating it, breathing it, sleeping it, right? Like, so then how were you doing mentally for that change? You're now playing, and let's get into like how that journey was for you I mean, football is not a very, like cushiony kind of sport. Like, I mean, it's serious. Like, my body hurts when I watch it and you guys get hit. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
right? So I can only imagine how you guys feel. So, like,
Yeah.
what happened there?
So when I transferred, the decision leading up to when I transferred was obviously very difficult, like I said before. But once I like connected back with my head coach and got back or got down to USF and
Hmm.
you know started mingling with the team and got really involved with it. I was like, man, I've never been happier. Like I love football again. Like I'm the most excited that I've ever been to play football just because like I now have such a positive outlook on my future.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so then when I came in the spring, like I was like, man, like let's go, let's get after it. And that's what I did. Like I had a great spring, great summer, and ended up, starting most of the games that season. So that was like after I transferred, it was like a full refresh, like full mental refresh, like let's go get after it
Right.
type of thing.
Because I gotta imagine, I mean, again, working with athletes, but also being a mom of a college athlete and watching, how hard you're working and training and practicing and showing up and then not getting a ton of playing time those first 2 years. That can be demoralizing for your mindset in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said before, like when you're a freshman and you're walking into college, like you don't realize it until you get there, but the expectation of walking right in and being able to play, like that happens to the being able to walk in and play is something that only happens to like a handful of guys.
Right.
And so you have to be able to walk in with realistic expectations and more of just like a growth mindset for that first year.
Oh, I
Um,
love that look at that way to look at it, like a growth mindset. Like this is a time for you to just grow and learn, like just observe, like a lot as much as you can. Still work
yeah,
hard.
absolutely.
Right.
And yeah, so you have to have that growth mindset and just being able to, not really focus on the result, but more so just like the process of being able to get better every day and, with the ultimate goal of, playing and
Right.
being able to go out and perform at some point. But
Right.
that's not always realistic in the first year. And so for me, like that was my mindset in the first year. But then once the second year came around, I was like, man, my career is only, it's a limited amount of time. And with the transfer portal and everything, I knew that there was a good chance I would be able to go find a better opportunity. It ended up working out for me.
That's
So
awesome. Right. So now let's take you through your few years at USF and do you remember your first injury?
yeah, I do. During that first season at USF, which was the one where I was doing really good, I was starting and playing and all that stuff. Was having a really good season, all the way up until I think the third or fourth to last game.
Mm-hmm.
It was in November. Kind of got rolled up on my ankle, and I ended up finishing the game. Like it didn't seem serious, all that stuff. But
Until it
like
was.
yeah, the next day, like after all the adrenaline dies off and everything, like could barely walk. Like I wasn't on crutches, but I was hobbling around. Like, so that game was on a Saturday. The next game was on a Friday, and it was an away game. So it was a short week. And I knew like I wasn't going to be able to practice at least for a few days. And the chances of me playing were slim. And I'd never really been through an injury like that. So I didn't really know how to handle it or how to think
Mhm.
about it. So that was really difficult. But
So what's the
what ended up,
mindset around that? Like, let me just ask you that. And I don't know if you're even like, if you were even aware of what's the mindset? Like, you've got these coaches, you're now here at the school, they expect you to show up and they expect you to play. Your mindset is like, I need to play. I mean, I'm an athlete, not that kind of athlete, but I know like I push myself to times where I should have just taken that run off, you
Mhm.
know? So is the mindset around like the college sports where you're at, like, let's evaluate you and like, let's kind of just give you some time to rest? Or is it, we're just going to tape your ass up and tape your ankle together and you're going to put it in the boot no matter how painful it is and you're going to get back out there?
The mindset is if this guy can play, we're gonna get him out there as fast as we can. For me, for that injury, like in my mind, I knew that I probably shouldn't be playing,
Mm-hmm.
but I also knew like my team needed me because I was one of the starters and I was one of the better players on our offense, and it was a big game that we were going into, one of the best teams in our conference, and it was a road game on a Friday night late in the season. And so I did everything that I could to get myself ready. The coaches are telling me that I have to play, and trainers are telling me like you'll be fine, all this stuff. And in my mind, I'm just like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. But I did everything I could. Like I was in the training room all day, every day that week. Made it to the game, played the first half, and that's kind of where it went downhill for me.
Mm.
Because like I said, going into the game, I knew that I probably shouldn't be playing. And then I kind of got past halftime, and I told my coaches, I was like, I'm done. I'm not playing. I just can't. Like my ankle's not in good shape. So, they weren't happy about that. And, I kind
But
of
you
felt like I
spoke
was,
up. I'm very proud of you.
yeah. And
That had to be hard.
that was the first time in my career that I really had to speak up about something like that, which can be very, very difficult and something that I had to learn to do like throughout the rest of my career because I've had other injuries as well.
Right.
Um, but that was tough for me because during that game, I kind of felt like I was letting the team down, but that was kind of what happened, and ended up finishing the season, kind of limping through the season, and then had surgery later on. But
Right.
that was difficult time, and something I had to kind of learn how to deal with on the fly.
So I remember that call I got from your dad. It's hard as a parent to see like you're not playing, you now have to have surgery. And that wasn't the first time, or the last time I got that call, right? So now that was in the summertime you needed to have that surgery?
So that was January of 24.
Oh, okay. So last year, so in spring.
Yep, so spring of 24.
Okay. And then after that,
So that was the first surgery that I had. I recovered from that. I kept a positive mindset after the surgery.
right,
Like, okay, I can, recover from this. Like I still have 2 years left, whatever. I'm gonna go finish my career and do it good. So I do my recovery. It takes me all the way through the end of summer to fully recover, like all the way up until fall camp. So I get to fall camp, very first day in pads. I end up having a AC joint sprain and I tear my labrum in my left shoulder. And so I miss most of fall camp all the way up until our first game. So they kind of taped me up, put me back together, like, all right, go play first game. So I mean, I knew I could play, like I felt confident, whatever. Very first game of the season, go in, torn labrum in my right shoulder. So then get in the training room the next day and I got an MRI on both shoulders and they confirmed what had happened and so the trainers were basically like, okay, this is a common injury that you can play through. But yeah, this is a common injury. You can play through it, if you're able to. And this was kind of another circumstance where I had to kind of think for myself and be like, okay, is it worth playing a whole season with these major injuries, or do I prioritize myself and my health and take care of it and do what has to be done? So then after that, I sat out for a couple weeks and tried to, do some rehab. And, I came back and did one practice just to give it a try. And then I ended up having the surgery. I had my
right,
left shoulder done in October and then my right shoulder done in November.
right.
Uh, and missed that whole season. So
And that was just last year.
yeah, that was 2024 season.
Right. So then you're now rehabbing again. And during this time, like, do they provide, like, the other thing I found, and I think I shared this a little bit, is that not all, but a good amount of like colleges, they're supposed to offer some like mental health counseling, mental health services for people, for the athletes, right? Did you have access to them and did you utilize them?
Yes. Yeah, we actually at USF we had a sports psychologist. His name was Dr. Lee Dorpfeld. And I went and I spoke to him a handful of times, and a lot of it was just like having a conversation. Like it wasn't anything crazy in
Mhm.
depth, like a scary conversation. It was just like go and have a conversation with one of the guys, and he just like gave me some advice and some different things to think about, and different way of thinking to shift away from like, okay, I'm injured and like whatever, I can't do anything to help the team, to like, all right, I'm recovering and I'm growing to be able to come back and help my
Right,
team when I'm healthy. So
right. So
there's
like more
definitely
of a
some,
positive mindset rather than like a negative woe is me, which we all would understand because this has been your life. This is your career,
yeah,
right? And your mindset is probably like you said, I'm here to help my teammates, to be there, to be on the, field and to play, and now I can't. So it's easy for, I mean, I can understand why anybody would get caught into that space. That's why I asked, like, what does it look like? The fact that you went and spoke to somebody, regardless of how in depth or not, like you had that ability, like is great. Because I do know, and I know I've interviewed a few other athletes, you're in the locker room with these guys and you might have some depressing negative thoughts. And is it something that guys even talk about in the locker room? Most of them probably don't.
yeah,
You're probably not talking about the anxiety that you might feel that you're never going to get back to playing or the sadness that you feel that you're not playing. So I'm glad that you had access to that and resources for that.
Yeah, no, it's difficult to deal with, especially during the season when you're injured and like I was in the training room when the team was on the field every day for practice, I was in the training room
Mm,
like not by myself, but kind of just separated and
right,
I had to figure out ways to motivate myself to do my rehab and tell myself, okay, like I need to do this to, put myself in a position to get back out in the field eventually.
right.
And so having that resource was definitely helpful, and it was something that I took advantage of to put myself in a good place.
That's awesome. So then you have this past year, 25, 26. Take us through that because this is now also like for people who are listening, like, and they're thinking, what are the years 2022, right? It's you're now also getting your master's.
Yes, so the end of 2024 would have been my redshirt junior year. So my fourth year with my injury that adds an extra year to my eligibility. So now I have 6 total years of eligibility. So 2025 coming up after that would have been my fifth year. Um, I graduated with my undergrad in accounting in May of 25. And then I decided that I was going to play for another year, which was my redshirt year. So that was my fifth year.
And then did you play last year at the beginning of this fall semester? Because now we're
Yeah.
in
So
January.
so yeah, 2025
Yeah.
was my fifth year. So basically, 2025, the way that that played out for me was I recovered from my two shoulder surgeries through the end of the 2024 season into about I would say April of 2025. So, late spring and into summer
Right.
workouts. Because that was a big recovery that probably took me 6 months, maybe seven
Yeah.
months. So that was hard. That was the hardest injury that I've had to recover from, both
Mm,
shoulders. But I got into summer workouts. It took me a while to get back into shape, but eventually I got into summer workouts, like got myself into a really good position to come back and have a good season. And I actually had a really good fall camp. Was in the starting rotation again. Played really good in the first few games of the season and was doing really well. Similar to the 2023 season, was just doing really well. Felt good again about playing. Just had that confidence back. And then had another injury to my knee during one of our games early in the season. And it wasn't a serious injury, but it was like just like an MCL sprain, which, it made me miss probably 4 games. But that like, it kind of derailed the season just because, I was in a good groove and felt confident and was doing really well. And then having to miss 4 games in the middle of the season to do rehab and all that stuff kind of just threw me off track. And
right.
I wasn't, I finished the season after that, but it wasn't really the same as the start of the season.
No, I get that. Because I can imagine it would be hard. Goes back like you've now just had, three pretty decent sized injuries. The two shoulder ones were like just kind of months and months of rehab and taking care of yourself. And now you come back in and it's the beginning of the season. And then you gotta
Yeah.
take time off.
Yeah. It was, I mean, it's hard to get yourself to, show up every day when you're like, okay, am I going to get injured?
Right.
And that's a battle that you have to face. That's really difficult.
Well, I've got to imagine also like when you already have these injuries and you know what it's like to have to take time off and to have to nurture yourself and have to rehab your body again, that anxiety almost of like the fear of like getting hit. And your position requires you to get hit quite a bit. And so that I've got to imagine like puts like does a lot for your psyche, right? Like so if you're not in control of like your mind, so to speak, and your emotions, I've got to imagine that's a lot harder to navigate.
Yeah, that's all true. And football is like, obviously a very physical sport. It's not a game that you can play scared.
Right.
So you have to be able to go in with the confidence to go hit full speed and run into another person. Going through the recovery with all those injuries, like getting back to a place, like after both shoulder surgeries, getting back to a place where I felt fully confident that I can go run full speed and block and go hit other guys, like that takes a really long time. And then like having that knee injury, like trying to recover that confidence in the middle of the season, like that's really hard to do right in the middle of the season.
And so now take us to where you are today. And for my listeners, like they don't know you like I know you. Obviously, I know your story and I know everything, but take us to where you are today and how you got to that decision.
Okay, so finishing up the 2025 season, which was my fifth season, I'm finishing up the season knowing that there's the possibility I could take a sixth year, which would be my medical redshirt year. And it kind of was something that was on my mind during the season, like thinking, trying to decide if I'm going to play next year.
Hmm.
And it got down to the end of the season, and my coach kind of sat me down. He was like, "Hey, like, are you gonna play next year?" And I was like, "You know what? Like, yes, I am. I'm gonna play. I'm gonna give it a shot because I want to, like, I'm gonna recover from this knee injury. I'm gonna get healthy, and I'm gonna go have my best off season yet.
Right. You're going to redeem yourself.
I'm gonna redeem
Yeah.
myself, and I'm gonna finish off my career on a high note." So that was kind of my mindset at the end of the season. And then after our last game, our whole coaching staff leaves, takes a new job. And so I'm like, man, like we're gonna get a whole new coaching staff, whole new strength staff. Everyone's gonna be new when I come back. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give it a shot. So go home for winter break, have a good time, whatever. Come back first week of January, whole new coaching staff, whole new strength staff. Everything's completely different. And I went through the first couple of days of workouts, and it didn't feel right. Like
Right.
I kind of put everything into consideration and, with all my injuries, all, the mental tax that playing football had on me over the last 5 years, like, is it worth doing a whole nother year and, adjusting to this new coaching staff change and going through a whole nother year of the physical impact that it has? And I weighed all the options and decided that it was time to be done and move on and um, finish up school and focus on some other opportunities.
Right. So that I gotta imagine was not a like you're saying it so like easily like now, like oh, but it doesn't I've got to imagine that it wasn't like a very light decision. Like it was a heavy, heavy decision and probably one of the most difficult decisions you've ever had to make your life or career so far. Because not only
Yeah.
are you walking, you know, I mean, I'm a mom, right? I'm a therapist. I don't ever view any athlete choosing themselves as like quitting. I don't ever view that. My son chose himself. He chose a different path as well. And I was so proud of him that he chose that rather than continue to do something thinking that's what his parents, his coaches, his friends all expected him to do or wanted him to do, right? So choosing yourself, given a lot of the factors, but now you're in a situation, school's paid for, you get NIL money, right? And for these listeners that think that, oh, why, it's so easy, it's not a big deal. These are big deals, right? Just choosing to be different. I mean, you've probably identified your entire life since you said five as a football player, Weston the football player, right? Like
Mhm.
choosing to choose you and stop playing football, which has been your life, which has been your love, basically. And then also walking away in a lot of ways from, a lot of the perks of it,
Yeah.
right? So how did you weigh that? Did you have anybody that you spoke to about that to like bounce it off of?
Yeah, and that was it was definitely a huge decision. Like you said, probably the biggest decision that I've made so far in my life. But in the biggest considerations, like you said, were, walking away from that scholarship because I do have a year left of school. Like, do I walk away from having the rest of my schooling paid for? Do I walk away from like having this NIL money coming in? Do I make this decision to walk away from all these things to give myself a chance at like being happy, basically? Because I knew that football was no longer making me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's ultimately what the decision came down to. And I talked to my mom, I talked to my dad, I talked to our sports psychologist, and I talked to my girlfriend, I talked to my brother, who was
Right,
he gave me some great advice because he played 6 years of college football, and he was in almost the exact situation as me after his fourth and fifth year, like kind of just deciding if it was still what he wanted to do.
right.
So I had a lot of really great resources and people to give me good advice. And I was lucky that, no one really tried to sway me one way or the other. They kind of just, gave me some things to consider on both sides of the coin.
Right,
And then I was able to eventually say, hey, like, it's not worth it for me to continue to be unhappy and like risk injury and all these things that are just weighing so heavy on my mind every single day. It was hard to walk away from the scholarship and all that stuff, but like it was so worth it for my
right.
happiness and all that.
And I think that's the part that a lot of people don't realize that, money doesn't always bring happiness, right? Like status doesn't always bring happiness. It can enhance lives, but if you're not happy and you don't love, like, I mean, I love what I do. I love being a psychotherapist, and there are days that I don't want to show up. And there are days that I'd like to stay in bed, and there's days that I'm like, oh, I dream about winning the lottery so I could do things differently, right? But, that's the reality is that, choosing yourself and choosing your happiness, which ultimately is your mental health. If you can't be there and enjoy life, then the NIL money is it's not even worth what it's worth, right?
Hmm.
And so making that decision, I mean, I know I was super proud of you. And I know because it wasn't an easy decision. And I know, having to share that with your parents that you were choosing that, even after listening to both sides and understanding it and weighing the pros and cons, of it all, choosing your mental health and your happiness over something that you have thought you were going to do your entire life is not an easy decision. And it takes it takes a very strong, confident person, even if you're not confident in the decision at that moment, or
Yeah.
unsure, I should say, unsure of that. What is it going to look like? So, what does it look like now? It's been a
Uh,
few weeks since you've decided. Are you
yeah,
sleeping
so
better?
so it's been 2 weeks. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sleeping good. Not having to get up at 6 a.m. every day.
Right?
Yeah, for now, like my priority, well, I'm still in school, so
Right.
all my classes are online, which is great because I can do that from anywhere. But right now, my priority after making that decision was like, let me take some time to go enjoy my life, like just do some fun things because I know like once I get a job and start working, those opportunities are going to be limited, like moving
Right.
forward. And this is a really good opportunity for me to do some fun things, some travel, um, spend time with family, just enjoy some of those opportunities that I didn't have while I was playing football just because of the time commitment.
Right.
And I will say, like, some of my greatest memories are playing football. Like, I'm not gonna say everything that football, like, I'm not gonna say everything about football was terrible
Right.
because, I've made some of my best friends, probably most of my best memories, like playing football. And
Right.
so that's, I'll say that football has done a lot for me and it's a big part of who I am. But it's at a certain point, like it's time to turn the page. So I'm excited to be able to just do some fun things and eventually, I'll get a job and start working and all that stuff.
You don't have to rush it, but don't tell your dad I said
Yeah, no,
that.
no, my parents are they're supportive and
Yeah.
I'm finishing school and kind of
Right.
working my connections and figuring out what it is that I want to do. So.
Do you think that there's any part of you that wants to stay somehow connected to the sport of football, given like your career and given your education and the business and the accounting road?
Yeah, so one of my passions is I would say like investing and like financial literacy type stuff. And during my time at USF, like I put some time into this club that didn't end up happening, but I started it with my one of my buddies. And basically the idea was like financial literacy for college athletes.
Which they so need.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
like during the NIL era, like there's not very many resources. So it was something like an idea that we had. It didn't end up really going anywhere just because, we were both kind of at the end of our careers. But I think my ultimate goal at some point, what I want to do in my career is find a way to, leverage my education and my experience to be able to work with athletes and do something like financial services related
yeah.
for athletes and with athletes.
I think that's great because I think, like I said, I've seen it, I've observed it. A lot of the kids are so young, 19, 18, 19, 20, getting millions of dollars and they don't have a clue how to budget. And that can lead to, a lot of problems.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So
I've seen countless examples of not only my teammates, but just people like other college football players and other college
yeah.
athletes that just don't have the guidance. So it's, I think that's going to be a big thing going forward.
For sure. There's a organization, I don't know if you've heard of it, Athletes. I think it's called I gotta get the name. I think I mentioned it on my podcast with Marcus because it's for athletes, designed for athletes, that gives them a lot of connections to like legal, to like financial help, like psychological help if they need, but it's run by athletes, kind of like what you were saying,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I think it's important to have those resources. Not only just the financial resources, but also like figuring out how to find a job, how to, interview, how to put together a resume, and then also like just like that mental, how to adjust to life after football.
Right, because that's a big piece. And obviously, like I work with a lot of retired athletes or athletes who chose to no longer play, right? And them having to adapt and deal with their mental health as to like, and we're not even just talking like that, but like how do they deal with like the eating and what they're eating because you're not exercising the hours that you were. So you're not eating 10,000 calories a day anymore, you know? And being able to manage that and like just learn how to like live in the present moment without the football or any other
Yeah.
sport, for example.
Yeah, it's a big adjustment, and it's like kind of what I'm experiencing now is figuring out how to like meal prep and
Yeah,
just live like a normal person as far as like meals and doing normal things and not like one thing that caused me a lot of stress during my time playing football was like I have to eat I have to eat a lot because I have to maintain my weight.
right.
Because that was like the coaches said that was our minimal commitment to the team was like our body weight, which makes sense because it kind of like keeps you healthy if you're at your body weight standard. But so I was always constantly eating just to maintain my weight, and so that's been an adjustment
I'm
after
sure.
football. Is like okay, I don't need to eat this much. I can
Right.
instead of having, 6 eggs for
Right.
breakfast and pancakes and all this, I can just have 3 eggs and a bagel, like
Right. Yeah.
or yogurt or something, just
Right.
like simple stuff.
No, right. But this is stuff people don't think about 100%. And I think that there's a lot to be said. So if I think of anything else, right? Like we talk about, you already spoke about like how you prepared for it sounds like you were pretty prepared and you had a lot of support that you chose to utilize during your injuries. Now that you've decided to stop playing, do they still offer you that mental health support? Like if you needed it, like would USF still offer that as a former athlete? I mean, you chose not to play next year, but this year is still not over.
Um, to be completely honest, I'm not 100% sure
Yeah,
what the procedure is, but I do have a good enough relationship with our sports psychologist that I'm sure if I reach out to him
right,
in a dire circumstance, he would help me out.
right.
But I think like once you're done as a student athlete, like you kind of have to go find outside resources.
Gotcha. Which would make sense. I mean,
Yeah.
in all honesty, it does make sense.
Yeah, because I mean, they have plenty of people to worry about there that
Right,
are student athletes,
right.
but I think campus does have resources, and then
Yeah,
like if you needed to go
right.
find third party
For
resources.
sure. But you also, it's interesting because you also have your older brother who's been through a very similar journey and what he's done and he's coped. And also your dad. I mean,
Yeah,
your dad is a baseball player who also got injured and knows what that's like to be in the pros and things like that. And
yeah. Having my dad, like you said, he went through a lot of injuries too. Like he was always throughout all of my injuries and everything, he always like gave me advice and kind of helped me handle the coaches and the trainers and
right.
um, just all that stuff. And my mom also played Division I volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she had as many injuries,
Right,
but she knows how to deal with coaches and trainers and
for
all
sure.
that. And then yeah, same thing. My brother, he's had almost the same experience as me. So I
Yeah,
had a lot of people in my corner, and I'm definitely lucky to have had that because I know there's people that don't have that support
for
system.
sure. Or they have that support system, but the support system doesn't support their choice to stop playing. And maybe that's
Yeah,
because they benefit from things financially, right? Which is in a lot of ways understandable. And the athlete needs to make these decisions themselves, and it's their own life.
yeah.
So last question, were you afraid to tell your parents this, that you're choosing to be done? Because I know you like hemmed and hawed on it and kind of like planted the seed a little bit here and there, but to actually have that final conversation, like I'm choosing this.
So I had kind of like they knew I was on the fence about it at the end of last year. Once it came time to make the decision, I was like I wasn't afraid to tell them. Because to be honest, I wasn't completely decided when I had started talking to them. I was just like, this is how I feel. This is like what I'm leaning towards. Like, tell me everything. Like, not necessarily what I should do, but like, tell me all the things that maybe I'm not considering.
No, right.
Um, and like, there was some conversations that stuff that was hard to talk about. But it gave me some things to think about, and eventually I came to a point where I was like, all right, this is what I'm gonna do, and they have both my mom and my dad and my brother have said like, okay, no matter what I choose, they're gonna support me, which
Right.
I'm very grateful for, and it ended up going smoothly and all that. So
I love that. Because I mean,
yeah,
you have a fabulous family, obviously.
yeah,
Um,
thanks.
Well, Weston, I so appreciate you. Is there anything for the final, like any last words, final view, like things you want to say to the viewers, like listeners? Because, again, I hope that anybody who is interested in playing college sports or moving even further professional, right, recognizes that it's not all the glam. And that doesn't also mean that it's not worth it, right? But
Yeah,
more importantly, I think is the takeaway is like you got to listen to yourself and be true to who you are.
yeah. I would say like, don't be afraid to speak up for yourself. Like specifically in college sports, like it's gotten to a point where it is a business. Like it's fun and there's a lot of great times to be had and a lot of great memories and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, like those coaches are getting paid what they're getting paid, and everyone there is there making money to boost the university.
Right,
And so you're really just you're another pawn in the grand scheme of winning.
right.
So you can't be afraid to advocate for yourself, speak up for yourself, and maybe like have some difficult conversations and ask for honest feedback, and advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
So that's all I would say, and just don't be afraid to speak up.
No, I love that. I think that's so important. Because what I think also kind of like the last piece is that players are always replaceable, right? And they seem to be the most loyal, right? You didn't want to disappoint your team. You didn't want to disappoint the coaches. You were going to just do whatever you could to get back out there, even if it meant you knew like your ankle was not okay, right? But the reality is that players, unless you happen to be, I don't know, like, but even like, I don't know, LeBron James, I mean, like these guys are replaceable. Emmett Smith, like they're all replaceable, right? I mean, they're fabulous, but I mean, players are replaceable. And so I think that in my experience working with some of the athletes I've worked with, is that that was one of the biggest struggles that they didn't want to disappoint the coaches.
Yeah, it's difficult. Like I said, you just have to learn how to speak up for yourself and
Yeah.
have those difficult conversations.
Right. Well, Weston, I so appreciate you. And I'm going to put your social handles in my show notes. And anybody who's interested in following, your journey too, because I'm sure you're still going to do some fabulous things in the future. So for all my listeners, thank you very much for joining me. I am Rachel with Perfectly Imperfect Me 365. Have a great day.